just like water. Sometimes it flows calmly downstream, and sometimes it aggressively breaks dams. And both is God, both is life, both is holy, and both is divine.
The Empress in us is a master of energetic fluidity. She isn't clinging on to one or the other. Her connection to the ever-creative cosmic truth is so strong that she dances with the currents of life. And sometimes she dances like the leaves in the wind, and sometimes she is the wind. Passive at the right time, forceful when necessary. She knows when it's time for surrendered feminine, and she knows when it's time for warrior mode on. Through this, abundance is her ever unfolding experience. She is never stuck. When something isn't flowing, she'll make it flow. She simply switches gears.
Welcome, loves, and the topic for today that came through really strongly was integral energetics, which is feminine and masculine energetics, and the mastery of that. The mastery of feminine and masculine energetics, it's very much so connected to how fluidly are we able to navigate those integral energetics, right? These are inherent to us. Yin and yang, these are inherent energetics. And how fluidly are we able to move from one to the other is deeply connected to the flow of life itself, the flow of wealth, the flow of joy, the flow of money, the flow of creation. So the thing is, most of us have not learned how to fluidly move from one state to the other. And it's also very much connected to our nervous system. How fast are we able to move from a sympathetic nervous system response to a parasympathetic nervous system response? And for the sake of this conversation, I connect our sympathetic nervous system, what some call the fight or flight, to our masculine, because it's not just fight or flight. Like, what is fight? It's also like, I'm out there, I'm doing the thing, I'm taking action. So when we're actually in this active creation, this is when more of our sympathetic nervous system is activated, or maybe even more of our masculine. And our sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, and sorry, I might switch these up throughout this video, but our parasympathetic nervous system is more of the yin, the feminine, the nourishing, the connection, the social aspect, the intimate aspect. So for today's video, I will connect the parasympathetic nervous system response to the feminine, and the sympathetic nervous system response, or the fight or flight, to the masculine, because I believe that it's very much so connected of how fast are we able to switch from one nervous system response to the other, and how fast or how fluidly are we able to move from the feminine to the masculine. And the mastery of it, again, is so important, because anything else is stagnancy, is stuckness. And when life force is stagnant, creation is stagnant, joy is stagnant, energy itself is stagnant, which means money flow will be stagnant, our wealth creation is stagnant. And it's a really interesting topic that came through very organically through something I observed, and I got a very clear ping of, okay, we got to talk about this. And I didn't realize how hard the journey for me was to unstuck myself. And let's dive into the origin story. I love to utilize the past to see how was our whole architecture built, what was the structure built upon, because it gives us a lot of ideas on what we need to tear down. So let's look at our parents for a second, or for a couple seconds. And usually our parents were living in something that was meant as a temporary energetic. So let's look at all of our single mamas out there. A single mom raising children, working, is usually in her masculine because she has to be, right? She is oftentimes the sole provider. She has to create boundaries. She has to teach the children strength. So there's usually not much time for the feminine. So she has to fulfill all of the roles. And because as a single mom, you're usually in survival mode, you're usually in out there, go and get it, sympathetic nervous system, what we see as children or observe as children is one polarity of the energetic and a parent stuck in that one polarity because they have to be, right? Usually in a healthy divine blueprint, we're moving swiftly from one energetic to the other. So from yin to yang, from feminine to masculine, from parasympathetic nervous system to sympathetic nervous system, depending on what is required. But in traumatic circumstances or in war zone, and being a single mama is oftentimes, depending on how we grew up, kind of like a war, right? She's fighting to make ends meet. She's fighting for her children. Maybe the circumstances with the ex were really, or the daddy were awful. So a lot of us have observed our mother in this constant sympathetic nervous response. And even though as children we might observe it as like, this isn't truth and mama isn't doing well, all we know is the sympathetic nervous system response. All we know is masculine. And what was meant to be very fluid, temporary, has become a lived energetic. So now, as children, we never observe what it looks like to swiftly move from one nervous system response to the other. We don't know how to swiftly activate our parasympathetic nervous system when we're in fight or flight and calm down. And oftentimes, we also haven't learned how to maybe activate our sympathetic nervous system right. If we observe, let's say, a meek mother that is living with maybe an alcoholic father or an overly toxic old school, right? I always like to say like this, the Slavic dad template. And oftentimes you have this very quiet and meek mother that isn't standing up against that out of fear or because she wants to keep the harmony of the family, the peace of the family, even at the cost of her own health. What we then observe is a totally collapsed nervous system, not even fight or flight, but almost this totally collapsed, resignated nervous system. And so we don't learn how to stand up for ourselves, how to go into the healthy sympathetic nervous system, the healthy fight or flight, because it's not bad. None of it is bad. Fight or flight is not bad. The sympathetic nervous system, we have it for a reason. It can be activated for a reason. There's nothing bad about it. There's beauty in our parasympathetic nervous system. But if we don't learn how to properly activate fight or flight, again, we're having the right conversation at the wrong time. And oftentimes we have seen this meek mother archetype just totally collapsed in her nervous system, not capable of activating her fight or flight, just in total disembodiment and total resignation. And these are just two examples, right? You know what you observed as a child. Just go back for observation purposes. What was the dynamic of your parents or the love relationship between your parents? What was the nervous system response of your mother, of your father? And that will tell you a shit ton about how your nervous system was architectured. And most of us have learned to be in one or the other. Again, mastery is being able to fluidly navigate the energetics, like what is required in the moment. Oh, then I'm going to utilize this. Okay, there's no danger here. Let's take a deep freaking breath and activate my parasympathetic nervous system. Let's activate rest, digest, nourishment, receiving, right? Because that's what the feminine is. Now, the feminine needs quite the maintenance. The feminine cannot flourish when the sympathetic nervous system is constantly activated. In a fight or flight, there isn't space for yin. There isn't space for rest, digest. So what we're talking about today, contemplating and having a conversation around, is how to become fluid again and how to detect when we're stuck. With that, we're basically studying ourselves back into abundance, back into wealth, back into beauty, inner, outer beauty, all of it. Because nature and God is fluid. And a lot of us have mastered stagnancy and we don't even realize it. And what I've observed in some of us is that we've moved away from the masculine, but now we're stuck in the feminine and we don't know how to fluidly respond to certain circumstances or to life circumstances. And this conversation is meant for you to detect some of your blind spots. So again, take everything I'm saying, not with a grain of salt, but let it like filter it through your system, filter it through your body. What feels opening, what feels good, what feels like it's maybe closing you off, and then observe or study, interrogate. Why is it closing you off? Maybe because what I'm saying isn't the truth or not the truth for you, or maybe there is a trigger. Maybe there's something to uncover. The way that I realize that I have a big problem is not that my sympathetic nervous system turned on, but I didn't know how to turn it off. And everything was beautiful, right? I was moving into a very feminine state, very feminine, very magnetic, very luscious. And when you're in that state, a lot of miracles happen. You're just very magnetic in that state of the feminine. And that is how my husband met me. He met me in a very honey-like, just magnetic state of being. And while you're in it, you're like, this is it. This is it. Like, I was able to ride this wave for 6 months and longer, literally almost no sympathetic nervous activation, just riding the wave of my parasympathetic state activated, just in lusciousness, surrounded by the feminine. Like, there's this royal feeling around it. And when my husband met me like that, he was in awe, right? Because it's a very fucking magnetic state to be in. It's slow, it's nectar. Like, if you've ever experienced it, it feels so close to God. It feels so close to the womb of creation. It is an exquisite state. Most of my life was spent in the masculine, right? Work hard, force things, fight for survival. When I came to the US as an illegal alien, fight for survival, right? Everything in my life was really fucking hard. And when I tapped into the feminine and I tapped into the magnetism for the first time in my life, I was like, I'm not gonna give that up. It makes sense, right? That when we experience this masculine, the pendulum wants to swing into the feminine. And it's like, no, now this is truth. And while I embodied that, I had no mastery in the fluidity of things. It was almost like I got caught in the feminine, and that doesn't work. We cannot get stuck. And while this is a beautiful state to be in, what came through in the last days was this constant, a lot of us are having the right conversation at the wrong freaking time. And so when I entered our relationship, I tried so hard to cling to this state. I'm like, I don't want to give this up, God. I don't want to give this up, Mama Nature. This feels so real. Don't make me give this up. And within like the first weeks of us moving together, I felt that state slip away. And I felt me coming from this, like, not even high, it was a depth. It was a depth, like a depth of connection, connected to my oracle, connected to my intuition. And I could feel it slip away. That was so freaking painful, because I'm like, am I gonna lose myself in this relationship? And I could feel it. And I had this conversation with God, with nature. I'm like, if that is what I have to give up, I'm willing to do it. If that is the initiation I have to go through, I will do it. And I fell into one of the deepest holes ever. And all of that was necessary because, yes, I knew how to hold the masculine and I knew how to hold the feminine. I had no freaking clue on how to be fluid in it. I did not know how to masterfully and fluidly move from one nervous system response to the other. And I had to learn that. And I had to learn it the hard way. And that is what the first 3 years of this relationship with my husband had to teach me. Again, it wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. It was really hard. And to be on the other side of it is just like, whew, wow, what a freaking ride. And I get why so many women do not want to give up that space of the feminine once they have it, because it's magnetic, it's beautiful, it feels so truthful. And yet, when we don't know how to fluidly move from one to the other, or we ignore truth, it's like we're living in this parallel reality, disconnected from what's really here. So just because something feels good does not mean that we have to hold on to it with all force. That's not what this is about. Like, there's no point of holding on to the feminine state, the magnetic state. Just like there's no point of holding on to gratitude, right? That's why I really have separated myself from this whole spirituality in itself. We all are connected to God, we all are connected to nature, but this subcategory of spirituality is almost neurotic, right? This whole like, stay in gratitude, and gratitude is the key. And while yes, gratitude is the key, because when miracles happen, you will see that they often happen because you felt gratitude, because gratitude is truth. Gratitude is connected to the feminine, because in that moment of gratitude, you're able to receive. You're able to receive the beauty of everything that's around you. That's the most truthful state to be in. And if we could always be in truth, we would always see the beauty that is right here. But just because gratitude is the key does not mean we have to hold on to the state with force and like neurotic, what are you grateful for? Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. That's not the point of it. Fluidity, truth of the moment is the point. And so holding on to gratitude and trying to force yourself into gratitude has never worked and will never work. What's truly here? What's your heart feeling? That is something that is to be surrendered to. So just like that, there's no point of holding on to the feminine, right? Forcing ourselves to stay there with everything that we can. It's about fluidity. How do we know if we're stuck in an energetic? Because it will reveal itself quite obviously. When we are in yang energy, we're in this action energy, right? The sympathetic nervous system is activated. We're ready to go. Like, it's go time. It's maybe active creation, or it's getting out there and really like putting ourselves out there. Maybe it's like getting up at 5 a.m., hitting the gym and building a body that represents our spiritual strength, right? Creating discipline. All of that can be very young, can be very masculine. You know, if you're having the right conversation at the right time, if that masculine state yields growth, if you see growth measurably, if maybe your following is growing, if your finances are growing, if your bank account is growing, if your relationship is flourishing, you can feel growth, baby girl, you're having the right conversation at the right time. Now, if you're doing, forcing creation, forcing action, forcing work, like staying busy rather than consciously creating, and you don't see tangible growth, meaning there's not more money coming in, there's not more ideas coming in, there's not more that's going on, like there's no momentum, you're having the right conversation at the wrong time. Same goes for feminine energetics, the yin energetics, or our parasympathetic nervous system. If we're consciously resting, if we're consciously passive, if we're consciously tending to our body, tending to our needs, slowing down, maybe consciously not doing anything. And the feminine is also often the time where we ingest, where we learn, where we read, or we partake in studies and we take in. And all of that is resulting into more beauty, more abundance. We can actually measurably see growth of that, either reflected in our business, and that's why it is so important that we have our own garden. We all need our own garden, because only when we have our own garden, which is our own business, we can see fluidly and we can see very clearly how life is responding to an energetic. That's why it's really, really important. If we work a job, it's like the job isn't necessarily able to respond to masculine or feminine energetics. We don't see if it's working because we have this rigid job. We need our own garden, our own business to see, to have a reflection of how well our current energetic state is responding to life itself. That's why it's necessary for a growth. It's necessary for a truthful journey. We need our own business. We need our own garden. And when all of that, right, this conscious rest, the ingestion of learnings, teachings, is resulting in growth, like we can see measurable numbers grow, we can see clients coming in, we can see people finding us, maybe our following is growing, ideas are trickling in. Honey, we're having the right conversation at the right time. If all of that feels all of a sudden a little anxiety producing, like nothing's happening, we don't see growth, and we have gotten stuck in this feminine state, we've gotten stuck in this passive state, it has become our new normal, where we're just in this state of we're waiting for an invitation, but nothing is happening, right? And we're waking up and we're praying and we're utilizing our song, but nothing is moving. It's probably because we're having the right conversation at the wrong time. Now, why am I saying that? All of these conversations are right. Our parasympathetic nervous system response is right. Our sympathetic nervous response is right. There's nothing wrong with that. There's just a wrong timing. And why is it so alluring to be stuck in the feminine? Like, this is why we're having this conversation. Because again, when we spend our whole life in the masculine, it is so tempting to try and remain in the feminine state. The feminine teachings are very alluring. And once we tap into this magnetism, it's like we do not want to give this up. Or it's like, am I going to lose myself in the masculine? Am I going to forget how this magnetic honey-like womb space feels like? And first of all, no, you won't. No, you won't. And it's interesting because this brings us into the conversation of surrender. If you even just think about the word feminine embodiment, you will find some raw milk drinking Instagram model in the sun on an island and promoting the concept of surrender, right? And there's this lusciousness around it. And a lot of times this is really triggering. Like if you go into the comment section, you will find a lot of people making fun of the voice or imitating the voice, because when a woman is speaking from her parasympathetic nervous system, it's really, really new and it's really unknown, because most of us have been living from our sympathetic nervous system activated at almost all times. So if someone is now totally dropped into her slowness, into this really, like, again, it's a honey-like state, it's a very slow state. And when we speak from that space, it can be very triggering for those that have been used to live from their masculine or used to live from their sympathetic nervous system activated. And so when we first tune into that, it is magnetic, it is alluring, and it is very tempting to be stuck in that. It's very tempting to decide that you do not want to live outside of the state. You don't want to be in your warrior again. You don't want to experience that again. But this whole surrender to femininity, surrender to passivity, can be a whole nother trap. And why do I say this? Because I've witnessed it. I've witnessed it in myself, and I've witnessed it in women around me. And the reason why we're even having this conversation right now is because I've received quite a lot of emails. If I see something more than 2 times, it's a pattern, and it's something that the School of Life wants me to talk about. So I've received like 3 or 4 emails in the last 2 weeks that all had the same thing in common. It was basically the same email. I am building my business. I'm building my soul-led business, and I would love to have your support. I would love to have you as a mentor, as a business doula. I would love to work with you. Like, I really feel the need to be held in your container, but I can't afford it. Finances are non-existent. I don't have a job. I'm building my business. I can't work a 3D job. I can't work a matrix job. I can't afford it. And when I saw this, I'm like, okay, wait, what's happening here? Because as I saw the profile picture, what I see is a beautiful, young, healthy, capable, intelligent woman. Why are finances not available? Big question mark for me. And the feeling that I immediately got was, we all got stuck in the feminine. We got stuck somewhere. We got stuck in one of the integral energetics, and we got stuck in a lie. And so again, it's a phase that I feel like a lot of us go through. That's why we're bringing this whole conversation up right now, for you to see, hey, do I recognize myself in this? But it's this passive state, right? When we detect, oh shit, my whole life I was operating from the super hyper masculine state. And once we find our way into this feminine embodiment, it's so tempting, and it's almost like there's a fear of, I do not want to leave this place. Surrendered femininity. And then human design is backing this up for the generators out there with, your strategy is to respond to invitations. Now, when we see all of that, right, it's very tempting to just lean back, become very passive, and allow life to guide us. And in that, it's easy to get stuck in the state of my needs aren't met, but I'm surrendered to life. And that's not the state to be in. Like, surrender is not resignation. It's not resigning to lack. If you are building your business and you are at a point where you cannot afford help, your needs aren't met. And when your needs aren't met, that's not the space for the drop-in yin energetics. That is the space when you're in a healthy divine energetic blueprint where your warrior should turn on again. Your warrior mode should go on. Of like, wait, I do not accept this. I do not accept the bare minimum. I do not accept a reality where I cannot afford what my spirit desires. Not happening. So this is where we should be activated back into our masculine, back into warrior mode. But I see a lot of women, again, me included, I've been there, done that. That's why I can see it so clearly. A lot of us lose ourselves in this feminine resignation. There's a difference between resignation and surrender. Surrender is trust in life, trust in God, trust in nature. Surrender is not resignation. And I get it. It's easy to mix this up, because when we surrender in war, it's kind of like this, okay, I give up, like, you go. But surrender in this idea or this conversation is just trust. I surrender to my nature. I surrender to God. I surrender to my higher purpose. And oftentimes surrender is not like I lean back and I just passively wait for an invitation. Because what does it even feel like to be invited by God, to be invited by nature, to be invited by the universe? What does that feel like? And sometimes an invitation is something that you forge. So it's not just passive. Surrender is, I trust in life. Life is my friend, not my enemy. But it's not a constant leaning back, right? And it's when we're in this feminine state, we tend to villainize force. We tend to villainize taking action. We see it oftentimes with being out of flow. But sometimes you have to force a path. Sometimes you have to forge your way. And it's just as surrendered action as leaning back and allowing everything to flow. Like, when we look at everything from this flow, it becomes neurotic. It becomes stuck. It becomes a trap. And that's what I see a lot of the women that actually contacted me in. And I recognize that now in me. This overly flowy state is a trap. When your basic needs aren't met, it's not the time for flowy surrender feminine. It's the time for action. It's the time for our warrior to step back in, our masculine to step back in. And maybe that means, okay, these needs aren't met. I'm not allowing that. Time to hustle. It's time to get this going. I cannot afford help to build my business. Well, maybe I have to go back into a job. Not this whole, like, I can't work a 3D job. Well, you make everything multidimensional. You bring God and nature wherever the fuck you go. It doesn't matter how 3D the job might look. You bring in God. You bring in nature. You bring in truth. And we, like, when we accept the bare minimum, what's happening here? Like, why is this something you accept? Because we do not surrender to our excuses. We surrender to the nudges of spirit. And we receive them all. That's what we surrender to. If spirit nudges us that, hey, this could be really helpful for me to build my business, I need support in building my business, we surrender to that nudge. And maybe that looks like waking up at 5 a.m., going to the gym, or creating discipline, or finding a job and creating more abundance, more momentary financial input, maybe a cash injection, so we can actually build the thing that we're meant to build, our mission, our garden, our ministry, whatever that is, right? So sometimes we need to work hard again to make this happen. And that's something we surrender to. If spirit nudges us that this is what we need, that's what we surrender to. We do not surrender to our excuses. We do not surrender to, oh, but I just can't make this happen because I'm an illegal alien. My favorite excuse. There is no limitation. I will make this happen. Spirit is nudging me to do that, therefore I will make this happen. So let's not mistake resignation for feminine surrender. I cannot do this. I have Lyme's disease. I have this chronic disease. I have this and that. No, that's just your version of illegal alien. That's just your externalized excuse. That's your externalized limitation. God knows no limits. Nature knows no limits. When spirit nudges you, it's because there is a way. And that's what we surrender to. And sometimes surrender looks like freaking warrior mode. And that's something that we have to learn. There's no fear. There's fluidity, right? We can have the magnetic state and we can move fluidly from one nervous system response to the other. So no fear. There's no stuckness in the feminine here. And that's something that I see, right? There is a little bit of a stuckness in a lot of us right now. And it's time to get going. It's time to move. And for a lot of us that are building the business, it's especially important in the beginning to have help with that. Like when you start working in the gym, you want to get a trainer when you just start working out. So you don't waste your time there, you don't hurt yourself, and things are just more effective. Right? So you don't just like go there and waste 2 years because you don't know what you're doing. When you are creating an actual garden, that's when you need help. So someone can tell you, hey, put that herb next to this plant because this herb prevents insects, or this plant likes to be in the shade, right? This is where we actually need help when we start, when we build, and you deserve help. And if you cannot finance the help that you need, if you cannot get the help that your body requires, if you cannot like sustain yourself in that way, or you cannot meet your needs, this is a time for you to go into warrior mode and decide that, hey, I will no longer reject the nudges of my spirit. I will no longer reject the needs of my body, and I will not surrender to my current circumstances, but I surrender to the nudges of my spirit. And whatever I have to do, I will do. There's no point of villainizing either. There's no point of villainizing our sympathetic nervous system response. There's no point of villainizing our parasympathetic nervous system response. Just like water. Sometimes it flows calmly downstream, and sometimes it aggressively breaks dams. And both is God. Both is life. Both is holy, and both is divine. The same with us. Force can be divine. Sometimes we have to apply some force to work nature's will, to work God's will. To remain in constant passivity and just surrender to whatever is going on right now isn't necessarily truth. We might be stuck in the feminine. So look into your life, and if there's areas where you feel stuck in, it's because you're not making a move you're supposed to make, or because you're not seeing that there is actually a portal that you can walk through right now. And with that, yes, I will tell you about my garden container, because that's exactly what that is. I see myself as a business doula, someone that's walking you through the portal, someone that's helping you create your own garden, your own business. And I am immensely excited about this container. It's either 3 months or 6 months. If you really want to build something and you are done surrendering to excuses and you're ready to surrender to the nudges of your spirit, especially when we are starting, there's another pair of eyes and another pair of hands that can hold you through it and see things that you are not seeing currently, things that keep you stuck or in the perception of being stuck. So I'm extremely excited about this container. That's my heart's work. I come from a background of marketing strategy. I come from a background of working in Silicon Valley. And there's nothing that excites me more than to build something tangible. And while we're building something tangible, we're healing whatever is coming up in the process of building. So I love you. I hope to see you next week. Please let me know in the comment section. Sorry, I think I spit. No, I did spit. I saw it. I think I spit. I saw the spit bubble shoot out of my mouth. Well, that was maybe a little too much information. I love you. Please let me know in the comment section if that was helpful, because again, this is a community. We're all becoming the Empress. We're all becoming the embodiment of Empress energetics. And I'd love to see if that hit home for you, if there's something you recognized yourself in, or if there's something you that doesn't quite sit well with you. I'm super curious. I love you so much. I love what we're creating here. And every time I get to create a YouTube video, it really feels like coming home. So thank you for that. I love you.